June 2024. The country is in chaos. People have taken to the streets to make their voices be heard. Others have come to terrorize the innocent bystanders. The government is doing everything in its power to pass a bill despite everyone being against it. And the police? Well, they are doing anything than being the police. Almost every day, someone is injured. If not that, abducted. If not that, murdered. And if not that, disappeared. The once powerful coordination of the Gen Z is starting to collapse due to a carefully constructed operation by men in plain clothes picking people in the streets against their own will. The 5th June 2024. The already chaotic situation in Nairobi town now turns to madness. The police have taken their ammunition, gear, and vehicles and march one way to Githurai. When they get there, all hell breaks loose. Gunshots echo through the small town. Tear gas shot everywhere. One man stumbles over as he evades a bullet. A child is shot in the leg right in their compound. Another man slides into a kiosk evading the bloodthirsty police officer with a rifle in his hands, clearly coming for his life. Countless others are shot and wounded, and maybe even more tragically, murdered. As tragic as that sounds, according to every media existence in the country, simply put, that never happened. But what did happen was a whole family had the same dream from their missing relative, and those dreams led to a serial killer being discovered at about the same time. And he was a bad man, so bad that he took the lives of 42 women just 200 meters from a police post and dumped the evidence 100 meters from the said police post. But when even the president himself, a man who should be the most informed man in the country at all times, thinks an 8-year-old child shot 12 times would survive that, believing everything you hear on the news is simply not an option. The police are being accused of abducting, torturing, and disappearing protesters expressing discontent with the government. On the other hand, Safaricom, Kenya's biggest telecommunications company, is being accused of misusing its monopoly to help the police track protesters using their mobile signals. But just when the heat on these two moguls is almost at its peak, a man said to have been a psychopath is discovered. A man whose appearance and coverage on the media alone shifts everyone's focus from the moguls. Collins Jumaisi, a man accused of dismembering women and dumping their bodies at the Kware Dumpsite, is arrested by the DCI at around 3 a.m. on 15th July 2024 while watching the Euro football finals. But you see, Collins doesn't want to make the police's work difficult. No, so he confesses to them of all his atrocities. It was in 2022. I had just opened a business for my wife, Imelda Judy Kalenya. It was supposed to be a perfect time for us. Make money from the business and enjoy everything together. But she squandered the money. I opened a second business for her again. She squandered the proceeds of this one too. And then she decided to divorce me. On one particular night, our arguments escalated beyond measure, and I ended up strangling her to death. I chopped her body into pieces, packed them in a sack, and dumped her at the Kware Dumpsite. His lawyer did say that this confession was given after he was touched here and there, but just like the police, let us assume that information for now. According to the DCI, they add that Collins also confessed that after 6 months from the day he took the life of his wife, he started getting urges to kill women. And from then, he would prey on a woman and lure her to her demise every few months. When the police arrested him and searched his residence, they found incriminating evidence like a machete, which they claimed was the murder weapon, 6 identification cards of men, 2 identification cards of women, 2 underwears of women, and 8 smartphones, just to mention a few. These items and his confession meant that Collins must certainly have been the perpetrator of these murders. So Collins was arrested and put in prison, and now the bodies of individuals being retrieved from the quarry had a credible source to refer to as the cause. But how did the police discover him? To answer this question, I'll have to take you back to 12th July 2024. Eris Kware, one of the victim's family members, claimed to have had a dream where her sister, Josephine Mulongo, who had gone missing for a few days, revealed to her that she was at the Dumpsite. This peculiar dream also came to several other family members of Josephine, and this is what led to the body retrieval at the Dumpsite. With the help from volunteers like Charles, a local well-known for helping retrieve bodies from the quarry, the family headed to the Dumpsite. Charles was no stranger to tragedy. He had retrieved bodies from the quarry before, suicides mostly. But what he found this time was different. He opened one sack, human remains, then another, and another, and another. By sundown, 9 bodies had been retrieved, all dismembered and packed in sacks. The news shook the nation. Protests erupted. Angry citizens pointed fingers at the police. It was only a few days prior that the Gen Z protests had turned tragic, leading to the deaths of several. Angry citizens blamed the police of being the ones who had dumped the bodies at the Dumpsite. Ironically, the police, in an attempt to squash protests of being blamed for murder, shot at the protesters, wounding 15 of them and taking the life of one. It's also around this time that the local divers at the quarry started receiving threats. One of them said the DCI had told them, "If you retrieve a body, you will be dubbed the one responsible for putting the body there." They received incessant phone calls threatening them of making them disappear or putting them behind bars for simply retrieving the bodies. However, this did not stop most of them, as they kept on retrieving the body and body parts from the Dumpsite, and by the end of 3 days, 18 bodies and body parts had been retrieved. The DCI then swooped in and officially halted the process. If there were more body parts in the Dumpsite, they would have to wait. The DCI, the top-ranked investigative agency in Africa of 2024, was basically saying the fast decomposing evidence crucial to the case of Collins would have to stop decomposing, as they did whatever they were doing for the next 2 weeks that necessitated the process being put on pause. Meanwhile, as a lot of body parts had been retrieved and most of them were unrecognizable, the DCI encouraged families who had lost their kins in the recent past to visit their headquarters for DNA testing or body identification to see if their lost kin was among the bodies retrieved. Among these families was Rosalind's. When they visited Nairobi Funeral Home, they found their recently missing sister, Rosalind Akoth. The only problem they encountered was only her upper body from the torso had been retrieved, and hence the DCI could not let them bury her, not until they had retrieved the remaining lower body part. But at the same time, the same DCI had halted retrieval of more body parts from the Dumpsite. Eventually, after 2 weeks, the DCI allowed for the retrieval process to continue. However, something seemed off this time.
Kaunti ikakuja ikaingilia ikasema turudi hapo ndani. Wakakuja na DCI, wakatuguide, tukaingia. But walikuwa wanaharakisha tuseme imeisha.
19th August 2024. The DNA results eventually came back. This was a good day for the families. It was tragic they had lost their loved ones, but it was also a good day to be optimistic. They had found their kin, and the police had caught the perpetrator of these heinous crimes. All they had to do now was sit back and wait for the law to take its course. The families that day went back home feeling a bit better than they had that same morning. They were going to get the justice that they deserved. 20th August 2024. The families woke up to tragic news. Collins Jumaisi and 12 other inmates had escaped prison in the break of dawn, and they were nowhere to be seen. But not to worry, the same police who had taken 2 years to catch him were surely going to get him in the next 21 days. A manhunt was launched. The DCI flashed on the news of how they were dedicated to catch them and bring them to law. Within 2 weeks, 12 of the 13 escapees were caught. But best believe, Collins was on a timed clock. It was only a matter of days, maybe even less, before they caught him. They even went ahead to put a cash prize for anyone who had information that led to the arrest of Collins. The families of the victims were devastated by this news. They felt betrayed. They were let down by the one organization mandated with giving them the justice they deserved. That justice was never coming. The family of Roslyn Akoth had no other option but to take the partial body of their daughter and bury her in a closed casket. They had lost hope in the detectives ever retrieving the other body part of their daughter or arresting the man responsible for her death. Other families never found their lost loved ones simply because the police only had body parts like arms or legs, and the remaining body parts, if any, was never retrieved or found in the dump site. The detectives, in their ultimate fashion, never found Collins Jumaisi ever again. Apparently, he was too good at hiding from the top-ranked investigative agency in Africa. As is to be expected, the whole case had clear glitches in its narrative. Firstly, the DCI had mentioned a relative of Collins Jumaisi. His name was Boniface Karanja. When a credible media journalist visited the town, claimed to be the hometown of Jumaisi, no one knew him from the pictures they were shown. Even worse, Boniface, the man claimed to be Jumaisi's cousin, openly denied having any ties to him. He said he didn't even understand how the police would have possibly linked Collins to him as his cousin. They were simply not family members to any capacity. Secondly, during the search of Collins' premises, the police found a machete, which they claimed was the murder weapon. But according to the post-mortem, the family of Roslyn was informed that after strangulation, she was dismembered with a hacksaw, not a machete. Moving on, during the evidence collection, the police also found 6 IDs of men and 2 of women. Yet Jumaisi was said to have confessed to only killing women. The police even claimed that Collins went as far as creating a personal bond with his victims before he dismembered them. They never gave an explanation for the presence of the men's IDs. The police also claimed that Collins stayed with the bodies indoors for a few days to allow them to dry up and prevent oozing of blood. Collins lived in a small bedsitter, and he also had neighbors. But in 2 years, none of them ever got a whiff of the foul smell of dead bodies coming from his house. Also, according to the confession the police claimed Collins gave them, his first victim was his wife, whom he had killed 2 years earlier. But somehow, no missing persons report was ever filed by her family or friends. There was no investigation into her disappearance. It seemed like the only person who knew she even existed was only Collins, and so when she disappeared from the face of the earth, nothing ever happened. And it's not just about his wife. Collins confessed to dismembering 42 women. All of these women had either not been reported missing for 2 years, or if they had, the police had never found them for the said duration. In addition, the police post was only 100 meters from the dump site, but somehow, the police never caught wind of what was happening around them for 2 years. They never noticed a man carrying heavy and filled sacks in the dead of night into the dump site. If it is true that Collins had been dumping the bodies in the dump site for full 2 years, How come Charles Wambua and other divers never saw the countless sacks full of human body parts in their several previous attempts to retrieve the bodies of those who committed suicide at the same location? And finally, to the million-dollar question. How come Collins Jumaisi, the self-confessed serial killer, the most dangerous man in recent times, was the only one who was never caught among the inmates? Some citizens never believed any of this story by the detectives. But if you think this story is crazy, check this other story of how the police let a man who ate the flesh and drank blood of his victims become a free man. Remember to subscribe and like for more Kenyan-based content.